Okay, in this lesson, you're going to get the opportunity to see me work through my own research process for my fictitious, I'm having a little trouble speaking, please bear with me, for my fictitious business that I'm thinking about starting. Now, as a reminder, what I'm thinking about starting, or at least as an example to give you something or have you see me work through something, is I've envisioned a lending fintech solution. So an online loan platform that does business loans for people where they can just apply right there, get a decision, maybe even get the loan funded, those types of things. So I've picked that as a fictitious business to pretend to launch. And I'm going to do some basic research. So I'm going to be sharing my desktop with you and I'm going to let you see me work through that. Now, a couple of housekeeping items for this lesson. This is probably going to be one of the longer lessons because I have a variety of ways I'm going to do this research. I may chunk it up into various lessons, but if I decide to keep it as one big lesson, just know it's going to be long. There's no reason you can't pause and go about doing your own research within the topic that I'm in at that moment and then come back to the lesson at a later date. So we've got about, and I'm going to be looking down to my side because for something this big, I've got some notes. I've got maybe 4 or 5 different ways or types of research I'm going to be doing. Again, most of this will be desktop research. And the difference between desktop research and maybe live research is what it sounds like. Desktop is I'm just on the computer doing a lot of searching on the internet, maybe using some software for some of that. And live would be calling people on the phone, surveying people in person, those kinds of things. You can do that type of research as well. As a matter of fact, I encourage you to, but it's just not something I'm sharing in this course or in any of these lessons. So let me share my screen with you and we'll jump into the first bit of research. All right, so I've got Google here up in front of me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start just digging around. So my very first search is just using a search engine, a Google, a Bing, whatever you prefer. And I'm going to be looking for uh, uh, information on the topic of the business I'm going to start. So I started to think about what people would search for when they look for my fictitious lending business. And so first thing I'm going to put in is business loans. And we're just going to see what comes up. And you can see one of the first things I look at, this is why I'm sharing my screen so you can see me do this, is I look here in this top corner on Google and it tells me how many results there are for the keywords I searched for business loans that I searched for. So there's 1.3 that's billion hits. So this is a very, very busy topic, a very, very busy topic. And I could tell right away that that may cause some challenges. The other thing I do is I look at who has ads for this topic. So you can see right away, Lending Tree talks about business loans. I don't recognize this company, so I may check into them and see what they're talking about. And you've got Quicken. I'm going to scroll a little bit. Here is based on my geography, some of the hits. And as I scroll, you'll notice now we get into Small Business Administration is talking about business loans. NerdWallet does it. Here is On Deck, and I know, and again, I picked this because I know this topic well, and it makes it a little easier to teach. I know about On Deck, and so we're gonna bookmark them as a potential competitor. You see, next I start to get into a bank, one of the bigger banks in the United States. This is Bank of America. They're talking about small business loans, right? So this is just within the first page, a company called Lendio. Again, I know this space well, so I know Lendio, but if we pretend that I didn't, I'll make a note of that name, Lendio, and we'll dig into their information. PayPal does it. National Funding is doing it. So this is all within the first page. Look at all these hits of people doing small business loans. Another one, Kabbage. I know for certain they are a competitor because of my experience. I also know about Fundera and Biz2Credit. So I know about all these, but if I didn't, if this is a space I was not overly versed in, just this one search on the first page of Google would tell me that there are a ton of competitors in this space. Now, does that mean that I'm immediately going to back out of this idea? No, it does not, because what we're going to do next is we would dig into each of these companies and start to figure out what they do well, what they don't do well, and where I might be able to carve out a niche. I said next, that's not really true. So here in a moment in the lesson, later on, we're going to talk about competitors. I'm going to come back. We're going to pretend I've made a note of all of these companies. I'm going to come back and research them individually. Okay, so just one Google search gives me all this information. And I can't stress enough how this simple desktop research matters. The number of entrepreneurs that I have worked with in the past that call me about an idea, tell me they're the only one to ever have come up with this idea. And then I do a simple Google search like this, and I find something almost identical what they're doing, just is shocking. So please take the time to do these steps, even this simple one. Now, before I move past this idea of a Google search, what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to try some other keywords, and we're going to research these keywords through one of my software pieces that I use, and that you can find some free ones here in a second. But just within a Google search, I'm going to stop right now and I'm going to try to add a word or two to the search. So right now what I'm getting is a result of everyone that is advertising or ranks highly on search engines for business loans. But what about being a little bit more specific? What about business loan software? Okay, so let's see what we get there. Okay, so we get companies like Capterra, QuickBooks, which is an accounting solution, but apparently they're dipping their toe into the space. Turnkey Lender. This Capterra, by the way, is not a company that does this type of stuff. I know this from experience. Capterra sort of is a market research company, and they aggregate or pull together information. Lend with Spark, G2. Here's Finastra. This is actually a core solution. So this is not, I would, if I were in your shoes and didn't know this space, I would make notes of some of these things. But what we're seeing here is this is just software that is usually used by a lender or a financial institution to process loans. It's not necessarily the front end in order to originate, what we would call originate, or accept applications of loans. So this wasn't the best search words that I could use. So now let's try, let's get even more specific. Let's say apply for a business loan. And let's say online. Since my model is going to be strictly online, we're not going to have branches. I'm not going to have people. I'm just going to use software and process. I'm going to, modern lenders. This is what they're doing. Let's see what we get when we search these words. Okay, so now, are you starting to see some commonalities in the hits that we're getting? This BHG Pro is popping up again. That is not one I was aware of, even with my experience. So I'm going to check them out here when we get to the competitors section. Top small business loans. We're getting back to LendingTree again. We're getting back to PayPal. We're getting back to OnDeck. We're getting back to the SBA. You're seeing Lendio, NerdWallet, Kabbage, Bank of America. You're seeing a common hit across all of these various ways I'm searching. So these are starting to add to the companies. Then when I get to competitors, that I will start to take a look at and see exactly what it is that they're doing. Okay. So I don't want to belabor the point here. I think this section is pretty easy for you to mimic. Just think about what people search for when they're looking for your type of business model. Try a couple of variations of that, and then do your own search, make notes of the companies that come up, and we're going to use those when we do your competitor section. Okay, let's talk about the next way I want you to do research. Now, this is going a bit deeper into those keywords, those words that people use on search engines. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm sharing with you right now a software solution I use called SERPstat. You can see it up here in the corner, the name of the company. You can find them at serpstat.com. Now, I've paid for this solution a long time ago, so I have access to it. If you don't have a solution like this that you pay for, that's quite all right. There are plenty of free keyword software solutions out there. Google even has the ability for you to use it. There is a plugin that will plug into Chrome. I use Chrome as my internet browser. These are some of the plugins I use over here on the right. There's a plugin, I believe it's called Keywords Everywhere, that you can download for free. And as you search here, as I would have searched here for these keywords, it would have populated here on the right and shown me some of the popular keywords that people use. The reason I'm doing this research is not to see who the competitors are, which is what I did here, but this is to show me how active these keywords are, how many people per month are searching for these words. And it will also give me an idea if I plan on using online advertising to promote my new business. It will also show me what it's going to cost me to run ads based on these keywords. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm also going to use this to look for how much congestion there is around this business. Is it highly competitive? And this solution and others like it, so don't worry if you don't have this one, will show you those types of things. So I'm going to use that same keyword that we first used, business loans, okay? This is, by the way, pulling from Google. So right now you can see for business loans, the monthly volume, okay, K means thousand if you're not familiar with that, on a monthly basis, that there are 49,500 searches for the words business loan. Now my software is telling me between 1 and 100, you can see that here on this pop-up, how competitive this is. So closer to 100 means it's super competitive to compete, okay? And I'm getting an 87, which means it's really, really competitive. This is showing me CPC. If you're not familiar with this term and you're planning on doing online advertising, you'd better figure it out quickly. This is cost per click, not cost per customer or how much you're going to pay to actually get someone to buy your product. This is just how much it would cost me to get someone to click on my ad. That doesn't mean they buy anything from me. That just means I run an ad and they click on it. So not only is this highly competitive, but just to get one person to click on my ad, it's going to cost me $21. You can imagine if I'm a new business and don't have a lot of money for advertising, this is not a keyword I'd want to think about. Now, the other thing that this software is helping me do, and I'm going to just keep saying it so that you don't panic, other softwares will help you do the same thing, is it's showing me other words that people search for that are similar to what I searched for. So organic words are keywords that people compete on, competitors compete on without paying for advertising, right? So it says the total number of all possible versions of a keyword found in the database. So if I were to put in, and this is interesting, you can see small here is misspelled. It's got an extra L, but apparently every month, 165,000 people search for small business loans. Now I'm going to take a sidestep from the topic. I know we're just talking research, but I just want to give you a quick tip to add value to what you're doing. When you start thinking about advertising, online advertising for your business, there's nothing wrong. As a matter of fact, I encourage you to think about using some of these off cycle keywords like this. Jonathan, why would I use a misspelled word? Well, because 165,000 people per month are searching for this. And while it may be misspelled, if your ad pops up, they'll still get to where they want to go. The other beauty of this competing on this keyword, small business loan with the extra L, is instead of it costing me $21 per click like business loans and only 50,000 are searching for it, 3 times that are searching for it, and the cost is $5 less per click. Could this be a place I could run an ad and get some benefit? So that's something to think about. Now, here we go, small businesses loans. Now that's not grammatically correct. If you're an English speaker, it's small business loans, not businesses loans. But look, the same thing here. Look at this. This is shocking. 165,000 people looking for it, and to get a click is only 54 cents. Wouldn't that be a great place to run some ads and see how they perform? I could show all right here, and it would show you all these organic keywords that I'm finding that would give me ideas for online ads I can run. So what does this mean from a market research? It just tells me how competitive things are and what it's going to cost me to do it. Right now, when it comes to what I've seen already in my research, the number of people searching for these things, the number of companies doing small business loans online, the amount of competition because I planned on running online ads. This is all stuff that when we get past the research lessons, we'll be going back to our small business planner and we'll use this information to help us figure out, is our model that we planned, is it still valid? And I can tell you right now, I would be nervous about the business idea that I had. I would think that it's super competitive and super expensive to get people just to click on my ad. I might be rethinking my business model, but let's keep going. These are paid keywords on the right. These are others that people are paying for or that are very popular keywords in ads. You can see business loan without the S is pretty popular, about as popular as business loans. That makes sense. Look here, how to get loan for small business, 5.4. So a little over 5,000 people per month are searching for that. That's not bad. I look for keywords that are at least over 500 or 1,000 per month. And this one's only going to cost you $8. So you can see these are all ideas that people are competing on. Now, let's get really, really deep into the research. So we've looked at a Google search. We've looked at some keyword searches. Now we're going to look at some trending information. And I'm going to show you 2 places you can look at this. The first is here through my software. And then we're going to use Google Trends to take a look at it. It's basically going to be the same information because that's where this is coming from. But I just want to show you Google Trends in case you don't have software like mine. So what you can see is going back to 2020, right? That this term business loans stayed pretty consistent. Its popularity wasn't going up, it wasn't going down, and that makes sense to me, just because the amount of people searching for business loans, it's not a new concept, it's not an old concept either, so it's going to stay pretty standard. Now for some reason it became very popular during this time frame, and I got to be honest with you, on my software I'm not sure what's going on with this 19 and 5. I can't tell you what months these are, but all I'm looking at is the trend of this. And it's certainly interesting that it peaked, but you can see it kind of flatlines and it stays just about the same amount over and over and over. Okay. So what does this mean to me from a trend perspective? It's okay. It's not growing a lot. The type of business that I'm thinking about is probably not seeing a lot of people search for it more than they did in the past, but it's not on the decline either, which is another really important piece of information. So what I would really be scared is if I saw this decline, like maybe this peaked here, right here, and then all of a sudden we saw it decline and it just, maybe came way down south and just got worse and worse. That would be concern for me. One more thing before we look at Google Trends is this additional information. Here you can see the companies that are ranking well for searching for similar keywords. Now look at this. Now think about these when we did the original Google search. Think about the companies we were seeing together: Kabbage, OnDeck, SBA, all of these folks, right? And I told you this BHG Pro was one I wasn't familiar with. Now watch what happens. When we think about who are the top competitors in this space, NerdWallet comes to the top, then the SBA. I believe we saw National Funding. We didn't really see Bankrate, but we did see PayPal. Start piecing these things together with your research. Okay, I saw some of these names when I did my Google search. Now I'm doing keyword searches, and these seem to be this NerdWallet, National Funding, PayPal. These are sort of the ones that are starting to become the big competitors I have to worry about. And so these would help me. I would research the others, but now I know for sure I'm going to go to NerdWallet here in a minute, and I'm going to take a look at what they're doing and use that to figure out how I might compete with them, or do I just need to not compete with them and spin my business model? Now you'll see I'm transitioning now. I'm going to show you Google Trends. Hopefully this works well. I haven't used it in a little bit. Okay, so I've gone to Google Trends, and it's got a keyword in here. I'm going to do business loans, just like we did before. Okay, now look, this is identical to what was in SERPstat, and that's because SERPstat pulls from Google. So there's the beauty of free software like Google Trends. If you don't have something like a SERPstat, notice it gave me a little bit more information, right? Here's some competitors and ads and things like that I'm not going to see from right here, but this still works. So this is something you can use. So here you go. Look, over the past 12 months, here's that identical interest. Let's play with it a little bit. What about in the last 30 days? So kind of fluctuating back and forth, back and forth. Now we do see a little bit of a decline all of a sudden. Why is that? So start to ask yourself questions. Why would I start to see a decline? With the PPP money being announced by the federal government in the United States, why would I see a decline? Wouldn't I see more people searching? Let's go a little bit longer. Let's go 5 years. Okay, business loans, not real popular. And then all of a sudden it shoots up back in March. Now I can tell you why that happened, again, because I know this space. If you didn't know this space, you'd want to go do some research. We're still talking about lots of research to help you make good decisions and try and figure out why it spiked. Or ask yourself, do I think something like this will happen again? Do I think this is an anomaly? Do I think this is rare? The reason it spiked is those PPP loans I talked about. When the US government, we were experiencing and still are COVID-19 in March is about when it started here in the United States, and the government announced some basically free money for small businesses to help them stay in business. And so lots of people started searching for it. You can see it kind of dies out here in May after that first round of program ends, and then it flattens back out to its normal or slightly above its normal trend amount. Okay, so these are all things to think about. Now here's some great information I didn't show you in SERPstat. Okay, This is interest by region. So they're taking all this interest and they can tell us by region where it's hot and where it's not. Now, why does that matter? Your business is going to be online. But what if you did decide your target avatar, your target market that you're going to go after is in South Dakota? Well, you're kind of lucky. South Dakota's top 5 right now in interest. Um, so that's pretty good. But what if you had thought, all right, I'm going to start my business in Vermont and focus on businesses there? Well, it's not doing so good. Maybe you need to rethink your location. I want to pause and say, can you see how this market research, just this desktop research, starts to help you question the assumptions you had made earlier and figure out how to dial your business model in to have a better chance of success? Can you see how doing this adds value? The number of entrepreneurs I see that don't even bother doing what I'm doing here, they rush off and start their business and then they fail and they can't figure out why. All they had to do was save themselves some trouble by doing this research. They'd find out who the big competitors are. If I'm going to run ads, how much money is it going to cost me to run one? And can I factor that into my financial projections? All of these things help you make a better decision about the business that you're going to run. Okay. So now I'm going to transition and we're going to go back and we're going to take a look at some of those competitors that we saw in the Google search and through these ads, these companies. We're going to take a look at LendingTree and these types of companies. We're going to take a look at them and do competitor research. Okay, let's now dig into the competitors themselves. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at what services do they offer, how do they offer it, what do they charge for it. If we can find that, we're going to be asking ourselves lots of questions about these competitors. And I should point out, this whole time you should be taking notes when you're doing your research. Have you a place that you're gathering all this information? Okay. So let's start with this BHG Pro. So they kept popping up. I told you I didn't know who they were. So just for fun, we'll look at them, but maybe they're a competitor. Notice they're saying loan for startups. That's pretty interesting. So let's click on their ad. That was a CPC, a cost per click to them. So they just paid probably $21 for me to click on that. And we're going to see what we can learn about them through their website. Now you can see it's fairly basic, but let's get an idea. So clearly they are what I would call a competitor for my online business loan idea, right? Because look, they're at least gathering some information about the loan you want. Now, I want to point out to you that, in this space, some of these companies don't really use software to do this. They're just sort of gathering data and then someone in the background is doing it. Sometimes that's hard to tell what's going on. So you do have to make some assumptions. So I'm just trying to get a feel for who they are. So they do loans for busy individuals. And you can plug in an amount here. I'm reading the small print. It looks like they do loans up to $250,000. So now I'm making a note of that. Look here. As a matter of fact, now that it popped up, if you'll see, it says between $20,000 and $250,000. So let's say that my idea, maybe I hadn't defined the amount of loans that I was going to do, the dollar amount of a loan I was going to do, but I can use this data now to tell me where I can compete if I decide this competitor is someone I have to be concerned about. Maybe this is some of those other big companies like PayPal. Maybe they say the same thing. We're going to see. But so I see between $20,000 and $250,000. Okay, well, let's say that I want to be what's called a micro lender. Now I'm thinking, all right, I can't compete with these guys on these bigger loans, but maybe I'm going to do $10,000 loans for people. I can start to use this research to help me find a niche to compete with them. Now I'm going to look at what they're saying about themselves. Approval in 24 hours, funding, which means the money goes into the business's bank account in 3 days. I'm going to make a note of that. Okay. These are all things I have to think about. So if I feel like BHG is going to be a big competitor for me, now I know that whatever I build has got to approve the loan really quick, hopefully quicker than 24 hours. And maybe I'm going to fund that loan and figure out how to do it in 2 days. Now I'm starting to figure out how I compete against them. Okay, so easy, minimal paperwork. Okay, making a mental note. So if I do this, I need to have minimal paperwork. And let's keep scrolling and see what else they say. No collateral. So collateral is, this isn't about business loans. I have a course on that. But the short answer is collateral is an asset that they put some sort of legal lien document on. They sort of secure that loan so that if you don't pay them, they can come get the collateral and sell it to pay themselves back. In their instance, they don't use personal collateral at all. They don't use cars or homes or anything like that. Okay, so now if BHG is going to be a competitor of mine, if I realize that later on, then I need to know that if they're doing it without collateral and I'm doing it with collateral, now they have an advantage over me. They've got fixed interest rates instead of variable. Okay, something to think about. Now, here's a little bit of their process, right? Estimate your payment. We saw that above. Apply online, get your funds fast. So we're starting to see their sort of standard lingo. Now they're telling you the types of loans they do. Now you should be, if it were me and this were my business, I'd be taking notes on this. Okay, they do debt consolidation, they do refinance, working capital, startup loans, business development. What I don't see is real estate loans. Now it says and more, so they probably do real estate loans, but let's assume for a minute that they said no real estate loans. Okay, so if I can do an approval in less than 24 hours and fund the loan in less than 3 days, and I'm going to do real estate loans, then I might have an advantage over these guys. So again, you should be seeing how we use this information to figure out how we're going to compete with these folks. Okay. So they're not saying a whole lot more to me right now. So I could dig a little bit deeper on their website, but for sake of the lesson, I don't want to drag it out too far. So let's go backwards. Let's take a look at some of these other folks. Now, you'll probably remember that PayPal and LendingTree kept popping up. So let's go take a look at them. Now we just cost LendingTree $21. Okay, so they're doing theirs a little bit different. What was that previous company? BHG. BHG was asking me to estimate a loan payment right off the bat. LendingTree wants to know how I've structured my business. Again, that's not what I cover in this lesson, what this means. But what you should note if you were doing this type of research for your idea is the process is different. So whose process do I like? What don't I like? How would I compete against this? Maybe I feel like asking this question on the front end from LendingTree slows things down too much. Maybe I need to worry about getting that information on the back end. Maybe that's a way I do something better than they do. So here, what you're going to see is I can't really get past this unless I click it. So we're going to have to play along a little bit. All right, so I can already tell you what's going to happen here is LendingTree is just going to take me through a lot of pages. See this progress meter here, and I'm going to answer one question at a time, and they're going to, start to ask information from me. Now, here, this is the type of business loans they do. I would make a note of this. So they do vehicles, inventory, payroll, marketing. Aha, they do real estate. So if I was doing real estate, now I got to compete against LendingTree. All these things. I'm not going to go any further because I know what LendingTree will do. They'll bother me a lot if they think I'm applying for a business loan. But again, you see the point of gathering this competitor research. I am going to do one more just for fun, but I want you to just think about doing this. Don't just do a couple, wear it out. Get lots and lots of information on your competitors. The more you know, the better you can prepare yourself to compete with them. I'm not going to look at the SBA because I know the SBA doesn't do their own loans. They go through banks. But I am going to look at OnDeck. All right, so here we go. How to apply for a small business loan. Now, what they've done is this is an article that's leading me to, which is very interesting. This is called content marketing. So they've got an article, but they do have a link to apply. So we're going to click that and see what happens. All right, now look, instead of taking me through a progress meter like LendingTree, they've just got this form I fill out and they've got some disclosures here. Notice they're asking how I heard about them, right? I'm going to create a profile. Okay. Do I like that? As a competitor, do I think that having to give my email address and create a profile is going to stop someone from applying with my business? Do I think I could do it differently where I could beat that? But you look, they're asking even how quickly you need the money. Here's how much. How will you use the loan? And then my name and things like that. So I'm using all this information to figure out how I'm going to compete with these people. Now, we've done lots of research. You should be doing a whole lot more than that. I moved through that pretty quickly for the sake of hopefully keeping your interest and just sharing with you what matters. The next thing I will do is I'm going to create a competitor matrix, and this is going to end up going into my documents. So we'll talk, I'll have lessons or courses on how to build a pitch deck, how to do business plans. And this competitor matrix that I'm going to show you an example of always goes into every single business plan and pitch deck document that I make. Right now, I'm sharing with you the pitch deck for a client that I worked with, and I don't think he'll mind. This shows the competitive landscape. This is all public information that I pulled off of the internet by doing competitive research, just like I just showed you. And so I told you that I take all that information, I put it together, and I build a matrix that I use in pitch decks and business plans and things like that. And what I do is I take some of those key competitors, you can see them here, and I think about the places that we would compete against each other. So in this instance, it's the cost right here, monthly pricing, class size, delivery channel, graded worksheets, all that stuff. And I fill all this out about those competitors that I looked at. And then what this does is in one quick glance, I can very easily get a feel for where I could and could not compete with my competitors. So let's say that monthly pricing here for most of my competitors. So we can see here from here, it's anywhere between 0 and 250. What if I had planned on charging $500 per month? I would be pretty uncompetitive, wouldn't I? So just being able to see that in one spot would tell me I need to think about how I change things. What if everyone else seems to not offer unlimited practice and I do, other than one competitor? That gives me an edge against all of these competitors, right? So I use that document to really think about how I can compete along or based on the research that you did. And so the whole idea with this research now, here in another lesson or two, we're going to go back and we're going to revisit that startup business model planner and the assumptions that you had in your head. And now we're going to compare what you thought you were going to do from a business perspective, what you thought you might charge, what you thought you were going to build, what you thought your solution or product was going to do. And we're going to take all this research and we compare it against those assumptions and expectations. And we ask ourselves, am I in trouble? If I were starting an online business loan software solution, there's a ton of competitors. You saw that it's super expensive to run ads. You saw that they all have pretty good solutions and there's a bunch of them. Maybe I need to rethink what I was going to do. So we're going to take all this research, go back to our business model planner here in a little bit, and we're going to start to use that to figure out, is this business idea a terrible idea and I should walk away from it completely and save myself some money and time? Or maybe there's small openings where I can compete against these competitors. And that just means I got to change what I thought my business model was going to look like.